I'd firstly like to take the opportunity to thank Peter and also Lucy and the remarkable people who've actually brought this conference together today. As a patient and also a carer, I believe today is going to be groundbreaking in terms of beginning to build a consensus and vision for research. So thank you also everyone who's here today, and thank you of course for inviting me to speak. I'd like to share a brief background about myself, though you've heard some of it. As Peter said, I've had over 32 years of kidney failure, a total of around 3 years as an inpatient, around about 15 years on a kidney machine, 4 transplants, and to sum it up, a fairly eventful life, both in healthcare and outside. And I've personally faced death a number of times, seeing many fellow patients and friends die, observed good and bad deaths, and looked after the dying. So as a patient and carer, what do I think today is about? At one level, it's about the dying across Europe, or those with life-limiting conditions. But it's not just about the dying. I believe it's also about us. Every one of us here today will, in their own time, die. As will our parents, as will our children. We and they will all face the last days of their life. And today is very much about how that will happen, not whether. Whilst the end of life can be very challenging, I also believe that if the right care is provided, and that includes spiritual care, such times can be rich with possibilities of healing. Actually, today is really about the Julians of Europe. So who is Julian and why is he important? Julian was a good friend of mine who died a couple of weeks ago, and it's his funeral today. Now, throughout the last 20 to 25 years of his life, he was one of the most spiritual men I've ever known. There was a gentle, humble, caring aspect to him that touched hearts everywhere, and more importantly, healed them. So that was his life. What about his death? Julian was admitted to hospital with stage 4 colon cancer after being in severe, unmanaged pain for 9 months. His weight had dropped by 50%, and in time he stopped walking, eating, and living. Now, when we got to hospital, everyone began to look at his physical pain, which was well managed. But that was it. His partner explained what happened. Julian has been getting weaker and weaker. He was actively dying. He was so weak, he couldn't communicate properly with staff. They left his stoma bag open, so it leaked all over him. They didn't even answer his calls throughout the day. He became very insecure and paranoid because he thought they were angry with him and they were ignoring his calls for help intentionally. I brought him home to die because I didn't want him to be there. He was calling out, "Somebody help me," yet nobody came. Now, to be honest, apart from not being there with him when he really needed it, I don't think the hospice really understood what his needs were. The result was that a profoundly spiritual man who had helped so many others in life was let down in death by a system of care where his total pain, especially his spiritual pain, was not assessed, recognized, monitored, nor treated effectively. So people like Julian are the reason we're here today. We are also here, I believe, to help all of those people who are dying, without exception. We must have a vision of that and of delivering research that benefits all people, regardless of which faith they have, if any at all. And we must recommend the different requirements at death and afterwards of what is, for most of us, a very multi-faith society. In other words, today is not just about God. It may be part of the package for some, and in fact it is for me, but not for everyone. How do we know this? Well, Because across Europe, the range of people who believe in God or some form of spirit life force ranges from 90% down to as low as 10%. Now, once upon a time, I was an atheist too. When I faced my own death as a young man, I believed that there would be simply a termination of consciousness, as though a switch had been thrown. All physical, emotional, and mental sensations would cease. There would be nothing, simply nothing, an eternity of nothingness. However, all of that speculation on what death was really like was proven spectacularly wrong in 2000, when I was taken on my own road to Damascus in a 2-month coma. 10 years later, well, let us just say that I've been transformed, and my perception of my illness, which was previously of decades of unconceivable suffering, endless days and nights of hospitalization, dialysis, operations, multiple transplantations, into what I now recognize is a gift to help others. In short, I've regained my faith. But as I look back at what I think has been pretty much 2 spiritual lives, and forward to the care I would like at the end of my life, through the lens of both an atheist and a believer, there are remarkable similarities to the care I'd like to receive. I, like my friend Julian, would like my total pain managed, my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain. I would like to resolve any difficult relationships, retain any sense of connection with nature, with animals and others, be sufficiently comfortable that I can contemplate, reflect on, and review my life, and hopefully find some meaning. Receive compassion and kindness in equal quality. And also, I'd like to be conscious until the very last second of my life, because I too, as an atheist or a person of faith, would like to live life to the full. So what model of spiritual care do I believe we should aspire to? Well, I believe the lady who you saw earlier on in Lucy's presentation had it down to a nutshell. She talked about a team, a multi-professional team around her. And I won't repeat her quotes. I think we also, as researchers, need to be courageous, creative, and inspirational today. Lastly, that is the single most important thing I'd like to say. Now, I know that being able to measure what I call spiritual duress is challenging, but this is not the first time as researchers or professionals we have struggled with concepts that seem to defy some level of description, classification, or measurement. Just take the concept of quality of life, which 30 or 40 years ago was virtually non-existent, and now you see over 5,000 papers a year being produced on it. Or likewise take meditation, which for some can be a profoundly spiritual experience. 10 years ago there were no studies, now there are 400 a year. So yes, it may be difficult to tackle some of the wording and descriptive challenges, but I believe we can measure spirituality or spiritual duress. If we can't, there is no doubt to me that we will have many, many more Julians in this world. So in conclusion, I believe that today is about translatable research recommendations, research that will translate into better spiritual care for us, for our parents, and for our children, where appropriate. I also believe we need to establish a vision that delivers excellent care to both those of faith and those who don't have faith. I believe we also need to work in a multidisciplinary way to deliver the excellent care that Anne mentioned. Lastly, I believe we need to be courageous, creative, and inspirational in how we define, measure, and deliver spiritual care. So today, when you think about which research topic you would like to champion, think about Julian and ask yourself, what are the research topics I can propose that would have ensured that Julian either retained or reconnected with his former level of spirituality? Thank you.